I'm Holocaust survivor Sam Harris. Stay tuned for Rabbi Doug.
We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug on your TV tonight.
But Daddy, I want to watch Monday Night Football.
Forget about Monday Night Football. There's no other thing we're going to watch on Monday but Rabbi Doug.
Yeah, Rabbi Doug on TV tonight. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug.
Oh, everybody talk about the Doug. Shalom and welcome to Taped with Rabbi Doug. We are here at the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Educational Center for the 5784 Yom HaShoah Holocaust Memorial Day commemoration. And we are here following the October 7th terrorist attacks in Israel, the first time where this Holocaust Memorial Day even has more meaning. Join us here for speakers, the lighting of the candles, and this memorial to our 6 million brothers and sisters who died al Kiddush Hashem in the Holocaust. In the Illinois Holocaust Memorial Museum and Educational Center in Skokie, Illinois, on Taped with Rabbi Doug. Israel Consul General Yinam Cohen.
It's not going to be a regular Yom HaShoah speech because these are not regular times. Yom HaShoah, the Holocaust Remembrance Day, has taken on new significance this year. On this day, in Israel, we solemnly memorialize the 6 million Jews who were murdered by the Nazis in Europe. Movie theaters and places of entertainment are closed. Celebrations are postponed, and traffic comes to a halt for 2 minutes as mournful sirens sound across our small nation. To be honest, having grown up in Israel, I thought that anti-Semitism was largely an issue of the past. However, the massacre of October 7th, the biggest slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust, as well as recent events here in America and around the globe, have proven me very wrong. We have a major problem in America. We have a major problem in Chicago too. We have a major problem of Jew hatred. Anti-Semitism has not vanished. It remains among us, alive and potent, sometimes overt and brazen, other times concealed behind misleading ideologies. Anti-Semitic actions have skyrocketed. The Anti-Defamation League has recorded 3,291 assaults and incidents motivated by Jew hatred between October 7th and January 7th, a troubling 361% increase within just 3 months. Throughout the decades, we have grown accustomed to Jew hatred emanating from the far right, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and others. To our credit, we have worked hard to develop the legal, educational, and political tools to combat it. Let's remain steadfast in our commitment to speaking out and utilizing every available resource to confront the plague of far-right anti-Semitism. However, no less of a concern is the explosion of anti-Semitism among the far left, including some members and organizations of the Arab and Muslim communities here in America. Unlike far-right hate crimes, which are widely recognized, this phenomenon of far-left Jew hatred often goes unacknowledged, even completely denied across many sectors. Let me be clear, criticizing Israel is not anti-Semitism. But singling out Jews, holding them to a different standard than other groups, is clear anti-Semitism. Hence, supporting the right of self-determination of all groups, but the Jews, denying the right of Israel, the one and only Jewish state, to exist, is anti-Semitism. Making false, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews is anti-Semitism. Calling for, justifying, or aiding the killing or harming of Jews is blatant anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, all this and more has become all too common among the far left and some Arab and Muslim Americans and their advocacy organizations in the past months. In many cases, to deflect accusations of anti-Semitism, they will brand any Jewish person they disagree with a Zionist, which we all know is just a dog whistle for a Jew. So, when the leader of the pro-Hamas, anti-Israel and anti-America student mob in an elite American university screams, "All Zionists must die," he actually called for the genocide of Jews. In late 1938, the headline of the main Nazi student paper, Die Bewegung, read, "The goal is achieved. No more Jews in German universities." In 2024, in American elite universities, Jewish students are screamed at, "Go back to Germany, go back to Poland." There is a direct link between Holocaust denial and the systematic campaign to downplay the horrors of October 7th and discredit the victims. Since October, the voices spreading Holocaust denial propaganda have been louder and louder. According to recent polls by The Economist, 20% of those surveyed between ages 18 and 29 claim that the Holocaust is just a myth. Only 2% of people from previous generation believe this lie, demonstrating a 10-fold increase in Holocaust denial in just 20 years. These are the exact same groups that downplay and understate what happened on October 7th. But even more concerning for me is the choice of some leaders to just turn a blind eye to rising anti-Semitism. And specifically here, I must say it loud and clear. Chicago, we have a problem. When Chicago's city leadership turns their back on their Jewish constituents, saying and doing nothing to combat soaring anti-Semitism in the city, including against CPS Jewish students, we have a problem. When the Northwestern University's leadership practically makes its campus a safe space for Jew hatred, capitulating to the pro-Hamas mob, we have a problem. When a Chicago-based congresswoman declines to condemn in Congress the greatest slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust, sending a message that Jews' lives don't matter, we have a problem. Chicago, we have a problem, and we can't turn a blind eye to it. Combating anti-Semitism is not the job of Israel or the local Jewish community. It is the responsibility of local leadership. We have the legal, the educational, and the political tools to combat this hate. We need the courage and the willingness to start enforcing them. I hope we will see this kind of leadership and commitment stand up so that the horrors of the past never happen again. The most important lesson learned from the Holocaust is never again. I say never again starts today. It starts here with you. Never again is now. Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, please help me welcome Deputy Consul Gabriella Bennemann of Federal Republic of Germany.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Just like Yinam just said, we have to think not only about the past, we have to think and observe what is happening now. So, ladies and gentlemen, I feel deeply honored and also grateful that you have invited me to speak today on this important day. For us all, it is never easy to commemorate this important day and to remember the horrors and the suffering of the Shoah. But remembering the past and learning from what happened is not only necessary, it is crucial in our time and day. This year, we do not only remember the victims of the Shoah, we think about the events of the 7th of October last year that have shocked us all. The image of the dead and the injured and the fate of the hostages have left us in a state of total incomprehension and also dismay. The fact that yet again there is a war raging in the Near East with the cost of lives on all sides causes us deep grief and a fear for the future. What was even more disturbing to me as a person and to many of my fellow countrymen was the reactions of part of the population in the Near East, in Europe, and also, unfortunately, in Germany. When the attacks happened, instead of showing compassion to the Israeli victims, there were people who welcomed the terrorists' actions and who even cheered them on. All over Europe and also in Germany, one could notice, unfortunately, you have said it, Yinam, an incredible rise in anti-Semitism in words and unfortunately also in action. To me and to the majority of Germans, including the German government, this is absolutely not acceptable and not to be tolerated. Federal President Steinmeier used very strong words against this kind of behavior, and I quote him. He said, "We here in Germany have to be particularly vigilant. We must protect Jewish life in our country and stand strong and resolutely against any form of anti-Semitism and hatred of Israel. We cannot tolerate attempts to celebrate the brutal attacks on Israel. Anyone who applauds this terror is not only degrading the victims, they are also trampling on human dignity and our German constitution. Such behavior," he said, "horrifies me, it disgusts me." End of quote. The terrorist attack on Israel and the war in Gaza are the cause, you all know it, as for a lot of discussion and also protest, also here in the US, but also in Europe. In a democratic society, political debate and free speech have an important place, yes, but under no circumstances are the events in the Near East a reason for the use of hate speech and the distribution of fake news. And let me say it clearly. No political or military decision that the Israeli government may take is a reason to justify anti-Semitism. Many political activists that protested in Germany against anti-Semitism held up a sign, and you also said it, Yinam, and it caught my eye as well, because it also said, "Never again is today." We are all called upon to be vigilant and to stop any new development of anti-Semitic tendencies in our neighborhoods, in our friend circles, in our families, wherever we may meet it. This is also why the work of the Holocaust Museum and Education Center is of so very high value, because it keeps the memories alive and it passes them on to the next generation to learn from them. Ladies and gentlemen, the war in Gaza, like every other war, is causing a lot of human suffering, hunger, injuries, death. The international community, among them Germany and the European Union, fulfills its duty to provide humanitarian aid. This is to help the weakest, the children, the old people, and the refugees. Humanitarian aid is politically neutral. It does not mean that the helpers are taking a political stand. My country is aware of its historic and present responsibility, especially towards the Jewish community all over the world and towards the State of Israel. Bundespräsident Steinmeier stressed this very clearly on 9th of October last year when he said, and I quote him again, "In these difficult times, Germany stands firmly by Israel's side. The Israeli people and the Jewish community in Germany can rely on us." End of quote. May the dead of the past rest and the dead of the present also never be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you. Please help me welcome Renee Silberman of Sheerit Hapleitah to lead us in the candle lighting ceremony.
I am here as a daughter of 2 Holocaust survivors representing Sheerit Hapleitah, the surviving remnant. The survivor organization formed by my parents and many other survivors is a way of formalizing their decades-long kinships and mission in response to the neo-Nazi threat. Back in the late 70s, there were 2 major groups of survivors. Those whose response to the neo-Nazis was to speak to the public, to educate the masses, and to form a museum, this museum, as a way of bringing truth to the phrase, never again. The other group of survivors, those who organized Sheerit Hapleitah, saw their mission as remembrance. For decades, they had been organizing the annual Yom HaShoah memorial service for those they had lost. The Sheerit Hapleitah group also decided to build a monument to be placed outside the main entrance to the Skokie Public Library as a way of reminding anyone who would pass by that there had been a Holocaust during which millions were murdered by Nazi Germany and their collaborators. Henry Jelen, the son of 2 survivors and president of Sheerit Hapleitah, will assist in the candle lighting. We will be joined by cantor Jacob Sandler from North Suburban Synagogue Bethel, chanting Ani Mami, I believe. Miriam Hupsher and Joe Silberman will be helping at the stairs. Our first candle will be lit by Ruth Gilbert. Ruth Gilbert was born in 1938 in Łódź, Poland, or Łódź, Poland, if you want to pronounce it the Polish way. When the Nazis occupied Poland, Ruth and her family were placed in the Łódź ghetto. Ruth's father recognized how difficult things would continue to be, and in the black market, purchased fake IDs for Ruth and her mother. In 1941, Ruth's father bribed a guard to let him sneak Ruth and her mother out of the ghetto under the barbed wire. Ruth and her mother hid with a family in Lublin, but only for a few months before the family was evacuated, leaving Ruth and her mother homeless. They rode the trains of Poland as non-Jews for 6 weeks. Ruth's mother met a woman on the train who lived in Warsaw and promised she would let them, Ruth and her mother, come live with her. Ruth's mother was able to obtain a job as a maid for 6 different families over the war years. When Ruth's mother felt her employers suspected her and Ruth were Jewish, they would leave the home immediately. During the last year and a half of the war, Ruth's mother was a maid for a countess who entertained Nazi soldiers in her villa home, but secretly also worked for the underground in Poland. In 1945, Ruth and her mother returned to Łódź and stayed there for a year before leaving for Germany. They lived in Munich for 3 years and received sponsorship to come to the United States in 1949. Our second candle will be lit by Ben Garber. Ben Garber was born in 1936 in Wilno, Poland. Just before the liquidation of the Wilno ghetto in 1943, Ben and his mother were able to escape the ghetto and go into hiding outside the city. They remained there for 18 months, along with several other Jewish people. Near the end of the war, retreating German soldiers found the hiding place. Those hiding convinced the Germans that they were Polish Christians hiding from the Soviets, and they were allowed to remain in their bunker until being liberated by the advancing Soviet army a few days later, in the summer of 1944. Ben was 8 years old. Ben lights in memory of all the victims of the Shoah who were murdered in the more than 1,000 ghettos in German-occupied Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union, and in all of the other towns and villages. Our third candle will be lit by Joseph Silberman. Joseph Silberman's parents, Esther and Tobias Silberman, were both from Poland. When the Nazis invaded Vladimir Volynsk, Esther Silberman escaped. Then Esther Weiner escaped her town and ran into the surrounding forests. She joined a partisan group and was lucky and resilient enough to survive the war. Joseph's father, Tobias, was taken by the Nazis from his home in Zamość and forced to perform slave labor in 6 different camps. In 1940, he was taken to Belzec and then to Majdanek. Tobias was then sent to Skarżycko, Buchenwald, Schlieffen, and then to Theresienstadt. His parents, brothers, first wife, son, and extended family were all murdered by the Nazis, and Esther's entire family was also murdered by the Nazis. Joseph lit in memory of all the victims of the Shoah who were murdered in the designated killing centers of Auschwitz-Birkenau, Majdanek, Treblinka, Chelmno, Belzec, and Sobibor, and the victims of the concentration, labor, and transit camps throughout German-occupied Europe and the Soviet Union. Our fourth candle is lit by Gary Berkovich, accompanied by his granddaughter Maya Bluestone and Milana Kravitz. Survivor Gary Berkovich was 6 years old when his mother, 2-year-old brother, and grandfather fled first by foot, then by train, from Kharkov to Tashkent, Uzbekistan. Many of Gary's extended family who did not evacuate were murdered in Debrytsky Yar, outside of Kharkov. Around 17 million people eventually moved east following the Nazis' invasion of the Soviet Union. People walked for weeks, sometimes months, under bombardment by Nazi warplanes. Gary wrote of his experience on an evacuation train crossing a bridge. He said, "We were on the bridge and the planes came back. Now they were going straight at me. In the dead calm of the car, the machine gun fire and the hooting sound of anti-aircraft guns were especially loud. Like the adults, I stared outside the window, looking at the river far below. I remember trying to figure out whether I would survive the crash. I did not know how to swim. Mom was quiet, pale-faced, gripping my brother tight. He stopped crying, gazing at us wide-eyed. Grandpa prayed, his lips moving without making a sound. Finally, a few horrifying long minutes later, the planes were gone. Our fifth candle is lit by Zoya Nikiforovich. When the war began, Zoya lived in a cottage near Minsk in the village of Druzhy with her nanny, Matriona Ivanova Adamovich, and 12-year-old sister. Zoya was 2 years old at the time. Her mom and dad, both working parents, came to see their children on Sundays. Zoya's mother, Riva, was a medical doctor by profession and was on the front from the first days of the war. Her dad now managed to take the nanny and children to the town of Orsha as he had to appear before the drafting board at his place of residence. He was killed in autumn 1941 in the battles near Mogilev. Everything Zoya knows about the war's beginning, she knows from her nanny. The nanny quickly realized that with 2 Jewish children in the city of Orsha already occupied by the Nazis, it would be impossible to survive. And she led the children mostly on foot in search of a quieter place. Sometimes strangers took pity on them. When they got to the village of Gorbachevshiv, I hope I did that one right, they were taken in by Ivan and Agatha Vasilichonek. Those kind people opened their house to Zoya, her sister and nanny, out of the goodness of their hearts. The nanny stayed with Zoya's family after the war. She helped raise Zoya's daughter and was considered a full member of the family. Nanny Matronia Ivanova Adamovich died in 1986 at the age of 93. After her death, she was awarded the title Righteous Among the Nations. Zoya lit in memory of all of those brave soldiers, the partisans, the freedom fighters, and the militia who served with the Allied forces, as well as those brave soldiers who liberated the camps, towns, and villages of Europe and the former Soviet Union, and for the righteous among the nations. Our 6th candle is lit by members of the Mozak, Lazarus, and Breitbart Seidner family. Leah Kirschenbaum Mozak was born in 1922 in Cianów, Poland. She survived the ghetto there, 2.5 years in Auschwitz-Birkenau, the Death March, Ravensbrück, and additional camps before being liberated by the Russian army. This candle is lit in memory of those whose lives, dreams, and hopes were put out before they even lived, for the 1.5 million Jewish children who were murdered by the Nazis.
Well, that's it from the Illinois Holocaust Memorial Museum and Educational Center in Skokie, Illinois on this Yom HaShoah 5784 Holocaust Memorial Day. We remember all the victims. Zachor, we will never forget. And I want to thank you for being with us. Remember, you can check out our website, www.tvrabbi.com, where you can also see former shows on the web. If you want to email us, the email address is info@tvrabbi.com. Hope to see you for happier times. And stay with us every week, right here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. Shalom, everyone.
מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר.
This has been a Taped with Rabbi Doug production.